the greatest savings mechanism in US history has been the 401k. And the 401k is simply a process where instead of getting your gross pay minus taxes, you get your net pay, which is gross pay minus taxes, but also minus paying yourself first, reserving money. And people very quickly adjust. We're afraid to do it. Oh, 15% of my income being reserved for my future. We're afraid to do it, but within a few iterations, a few weeks or months, it's like, oh, okay, this is my new lifestyle. And we don't worry about it. And the money accumulates. Well, the realization is in business, when we take our profit first, maybe it's that 10 or 15%, maybe it's 20%, and remove it, there's this fear and hesitancy. If I do this, my business will collapse. But instead, what really happens is the money goes away. If you want to be profitable, you have to take your profit, and then you're left with what's truly available.
This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners. Today is a podcast I highly encourage you to listen to during a time where you can really sit down and take some notes and soak in this conversation. Mike Michalowicz has built 4 different multi-million-dollar companies, keynote speaker, has over 500,000 readers of his best-selling books, including 2 that we're going to talk about today. I'll just plug them here. Clockwork and Profit First, so I'll probably reference those a few times here. But here's what I think is also really interesting for, I know most of the people that listen to this podcast are financial advisors, which makes you a small business owner. Mike has also lost his house, lost his fortune twice, had 10 businesses fail, spent 2 decades in entrepreneurial poverty, as he describes it. So there's not a lot he has not experienced in the world of entrepreneurship, and we're going to talk today about how to change your mindset around the cash management of your company, as well as the best ways that Mike has learned to scale his growing business. So Michael, welcome to the Business of Advice podcast.
It's a joy to be with you. Thanks for having me.
I told you right before we were starting, a good friend of mine that's one of our advisors is up in Kansas City, and I texted him, said, hey, I'm having Mike on the podcast today, and he recorded and sent me some back, and he's like, well, tell me you changed my life. So I'm excited to talk about that. But he read your book, Profit First, and just changed the entire way that he managed his business. And I know I hit on your background a little in the introduction, but maybe just expand on your experiences and the lessons that led you to where you are today.
Sure. So I've been an entrepreneur ever since I graduated college, not by design, not by intent. I couldn't get a good job out of college, not the job I wanted. So lamenting the work I was doing, I said, I'm going to start my own business. And fell in love with entrepreneurship, not right away. I didn't realize how brutally hard it was, but fell in love with the potential control it had. But it did take me a long time. I had some early successes. I built a couple of businesses that sold. One was a private equity exit, and another was a Fortune 500 acquisition. But I think what's important, which I don't share on my CV, is none of those businesses were profitable. They were growing on revenue, but I was playing the cash flow panic game. Sell more to cover expenses, sell more. I was constantly panicking to sell. And I was approaching the cliff. The debt was accumulating. And if I didn't get big projects, I didn't have enough money to fund all my bills. But an investor swooped in 2 cases. One's private equity. Another was a company called Robert Half International. They bought my companies. So then I was like, oh, I guess the key to success is grow a lot of companies quickly because you can't make them profitable and then exit fast. So I started 10 businesses simultaneously as an angel investor. I had no clue what I was doing. All these businesses collapsed. I blew all my money. Every dollar I made selling my businesses, I lost within a couple of years. And it became for me a great reset. I did lose my house as a result. I lost all my possessions. The only thing I didn't lose was my family. And starting anew, I started asking myself, what don't I understand about entrepreneurship? Which was basically everything. I thought I knew everything, but I knew nothing. And so what I committed to, this is about 15 years ago, I committed to investigate what we think works, but really doesn't, and then find the real method to make it work. Profit's a great example. We follow this formula of taking profit last. It's the bottom line, the year end, all terms for it's last.
Yep.
And yet almost no business is profitable. Most survive check by check. So I investigated the formula and said, oh my God, the formula is wrong. And if we simply fix it, it aligns everything else. By taking our profit first, everything else comes into alignment. So I do that now as an author. I'm a full-time author. I study all these different elements of business and figure out what we're being told is right, that is really wrong, and trying to fix it.
So I referenced this book, Profit First. I know you mentioned it. The book that changed my buddy's life. A lot of our advisors have read and implemented the system in this. And it's what we'll spend a little bit of time on both these. But this is one that I really think for the entrepreneurs that are listening to this can be a game changer for them. Because I'm sure everyone, when you talked about kind of living check to check and just, waiting to the end of the year to see where you're at, understands that feeling at times. So at a 50,000 foot level, tell us the idea behind Profit First.
For sure. So it's a behavioral mechanism, and it's rooted in the pay yourself first principle. So we've been told that when something comes first, we address it. They say, the most important work you do, make sure that's the first thing you do in the day. If you commit to exercising, for almost all of us, exercise first, so easy to put it off. But when it comes to the pay yourself first principle, we've been told if you want to have savings for your future, when you earn an income, first save for that future, pay yourself first. It's interesting, the greatest savings mechanism in US history has been the 401k. And the 401k is simply a process where instead of getting your gross pay minus taxes, you get your net pay, which is gross pay minus taxes, but also minus paying yourself first, reserving money. And people very quickly adjust. We're afraid to do it. 15% of my income being reserved for my future. We're afraid to do it, but within a few iterations, a few weeks or months, it's like, oh, okay, this is my new lifestyle. And we don't worry about it. And the money accumulates. Well, the realization is in business, when we take our profit first, maybe it's that 10 or 15%, maybe it's 20%, and remove it, there's this fear and hesitancy. If I do this, my business will collapse. But instead, what really happens is the money goes away. If you want to be profitable, you have to take your profit, and then you're left with what's truly available. I used to think $1,000 deposits came in at $1,000 to buy that new computer equipment or pay payroll this week or whatever was imminently in front of me. But when I take my profit first, I see what's truly available. I don't have $1,000, maybe it's $600. And I start working within the confines of what's truly available for my business. In other words, I'm reverse engineering my profit by taking it first.
Such a powerful concept, and we'll dig in. One of the things I share all the time, our mission here at Advisors Excels, we say all the time, we want to help good advisors become great business owners. Yeah. And I think one of the most important things about being a great business owner is making a profit. And we see so many advisors that come here that they've built, what would look like from the outside looking in, this amazing business. They're growing the number of families they serve, their production, maybe revenue's going through the roof. And then you'll find out they have cash flow problems, and I have a good friend, Keith Cunningham, who's been on the podcast. He says, doing anything that makes your life harder if it doesn't make you more money is insanity, right? So there's two concepts I'd love you to maybe just expound on a little bit. One is the idea of sustained profitability depends on efficiency. And then the second one you talk about is sales minus expenses equals profit is killing your business. So maybe just talk about those two concepts and why they're important for an entrepreneur business owner to understand.
For sure. So we'll talk about the efficiency first. There is a confusion that entrepreneurs have around what growth is versus scaling. Most entrepreneurs I meet with say, I'm looking to scale my business, or I am actively scaling my business. I say, well, tell me what you're doing. They say, well, I'm working harder. I'm a workaholic. I'm in the hustle and grind mentality. I'm bringing on more people. And I'm like, oh, you're not scaling your business. You're growing your business. And there's a little bit of point of confusion, and that's by design. We have to differentiate what they are. Growing is the concept of bringing more resources, more to the table to get more out of it. If I want to get more out of my business, I need to put more into it. Usually starts with a small business owner, them contributing more effort, more time, sometimes their own money out of their own pocket. I put more into it. Scaling, on the other hand, is contributing less resources, actually extracting or removing resource contribution to affect greater output. It's called leverage. Like, what are the fewer things I can do that'll bring the greater results? So most businesses are in a growth orientation, which has an inherent limit. There's only so much available of resources, ourselves, others, funds, money. But scaling is an unlimited resource because we're actually looking to compress what's available to double the output. Profitable businesses are ones that focus on scale. It's all about efficiency, more output with less input. Now, what we do with Profit First, that formula, is we trigger the behavior by reverse engineering it. The traditional formula we've been given is sales minus expense equals profit. And when I say traditional, this is in every book I've read and researched around profitability.
Everyone, yeah.
It's foundational. It's called GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. It is established. There's over 300 years of documentation about this being the standard formula. And it is logically accurate because the only way to have profit, according to the formula, is when revenue comes in, you subtract the expenses you incurred, and what's left over is profit. And that is the logic. But what I teach in Profit First is that humanity is not, we don't default on logic, we default on behavior and emotion. Most people, when we see what's available to us at our bank account, we say that's what we have to spend. There's a behavioral concept called Parkinson's law, nothing to do with Parkinson's disease. This guy was studying human behavior and noticed as a resource expands in availability, we actually consume more. So if I'm given a week to complete a project for you, it'll probably take me a week to do it. But if you and I, the same people, agree to the same project, if I say I'll get it done in one day, I'll likely get it done in one day because I've compressed the resource of time. So in Profit First, what I realize is, the more money a business makes, the more we spend because of Parkinson's law. And for most businesses, as revenue increases over time, expenses almost uncannily increase at the same rate. It seems like there's some kind of divine intervention peeling money out of us. But the reality is it's our own behavioral wiring. More resource, more money, more we spend. So therefore, we need to put in this intercept. As money comes in, we immediately redirect a portion of it, percentage, Profit First, hide it from the business, and then we have a reduced amount available, and then our spending in accordance is automatically reduced. It's forced frugality. But what's my favorite part is we've over 700,000 companies now that have deployed Profit First. And we have thousands of case studies. My favorite part is these businesses consistently grow faster than their contemporaries, which kind of, again, defies logic. We all know it takes money to make money. But what we've discovered is it takes innovation to make money. A lot of people spend money very poorly and guilty of it for a long time. And still, sometimes I rear my ugly head and blow money.
Yep.
But the reality is the construction of money, the reduction of money forces you to think outside the box, challenge the industry standards and norms, and find new ways of growing your business. And a lot of these businesses start growing much faster than their contemporaries because they're doing what the contemporaries aren't willing or able to do because they can't even see it. So that's why we reverse this formula.
Do you see also in that, here's what I was going to ask is, one of the pushbacks I get from advisors when I recommend this, if I see they're having, I'm like, you need to read this book. One of the pushbacks I get is like, well, if I take the profit first, how am I going to have the capital to grow, and I'm trying to grow the business. Yeah. One of the things you said there that I was going to ask also is like, does it also force a certain discipline around the business that you think makes those business owners better? But maybe talk to that objection that I hear, and then I was just curious if you see a better discipline. Like it takes some discipline to pay yourself first, right? But once you do that, does it make them look different at, like, do we really need to spend money on this? Like, is that really returning? So cool.
That's exactly what happens. So the number one form of pushback I get is I want to grow. And we all know it takes money to make money, Mike, so I got to spend more money. And the reality is that's not healthy growth. That is artificial growth, and it's usually arbitrary. Creativity comes out of constraint. That's the thing we got to realize is, and all artists know this, when you start putting parameters of constraint around you, that's actually when you flourish because you have to find ways to work within the constraint. When we reduce the amount of money available to spend in the business, we have to question how we're spending the money. So right now, if I logged my bank account and didn't take Profit First and it was just all the money coming in is available, I'll say, well, I can use some of this on Facebook ads. A lot of people are doing Facebook ads, and I can do some of this and do some of that. But when there's less money available to spend, I have to say, well, I need results. I need business. Where is the appropriate place to spend it? Very few people run the ROI calculation because all the money that we have is available. So I'm just going to test things out, throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, which is the worst way to scale a business. When we have less money, we have to be very selective. So it forces the discipline of consideration. If I put the money here, what's the return? Or maybe I'll put a small tranche of money to see what the actual results are before I amplify the spend here. We become much more selective in how we spend, and we cater to what's working and amplify that much more naturally by constraining what's available.
That's really good. And I think that is what I've seen. The people get more disciplined around it, make smarter choices. They don't just spend money wildly, because most entrepreneurs are kind of guilty of that. If we've got the money, we're going to go spend it, right? Like shiny objects from time to time. So being very disciplined around that. So I know we don't have, in the time that we have together, we don't have time to go into like great detail on profit first, but in the book, you have this instant assessment spreadsheet that kind of breaks down range of revenues,
Right.
Target allocation. So you've made that a pretty easy first step. And I know you even talked about Parkinson's law earlier. And that instant assessment spreadsheet, I think, is a way to fight that. You want to talk about that as just a tool if people are interested that they can go check out?
Yeah. So what I did is, I was writing the book, we researched out about 1,000 businesses. It was a little bit over 1,000. And we looked at all industries. So the research was industry agnostic. But the question we asked is, what are the best performing companies doing from a profit perspective in every industry? And it was interesting. We didn't find one industry where there's no margin. So, I talk to manufacturers and say, well, manufacturing, you don't have margins. Oh, about 5% of the market makes ridiculous margins. I talk to pizza shops. Oh, restaurants, no margin. Oh, there's about 5-6% of pizza shops that are crushing it financially. And we saw this again and again in professional services, retail outlets, all these different things. So we said, okay, let's set the standard as the fiscally elite. Now, based on different revenue ranges, the dispersion of cash changes. So for example, a very small company that does $250,000, $250,000 or less in revenue typically is a solopreneur. Maybe they have one full-time or part-time employee. In those businesses, and what we break down in the instant assessment is where money's allocated when it comes in. If $1,000 comes in, maybe 15% will go to a profit, maybe 50% will go to the compensation of the owner, because the owner in a small business is actually the number one employee in most all cases.
Yep.
Money's reserved for taxes. The number one bill associated with operating a business that business owner is least prepared for is the tax bill. And a business, always pay your taxes. It doesn't matter if you're an S Corp or C Corp or an LLC or hybrid. Your business either pays the taxes directly or can reimburse you for the taxes withdrawn from your paycheck, but the business can take care of the tax responsibility. And then the last part's OpEx. So in the instant assessment, we looked at all different ranges up to $50 million companies. Most businesses that deploy profit first are sub $10 million in revenue. The sweet spot somewhere between $500,000 to $10 million of our readers. And based upon what revenue range you're in, we tell you what the fiscally elite are doing. Then what I challenge readers to do is, let's set that as the goal. Maybe that's not the starting point, but let's become part of the fiscally elite, the best companies. And then we have a rollout process that we start with where you are today. Most businesses, sadly, are not profitable. So you start off with zero profit. We want to get you to 15%, and we start incrementally moving there. Most owners grossly underpay themselves. One question I ask is, you how to replace yourself? Someone that does all the things you do, takes care of the business the way you do, what would you have to pay them? And the salaries I get back usually are pretty high salaries, and I think they're justified. Thing is, the owner isn't paying themselves that way, yet they are that person. So the business has that person, but we're not compensating appropriately. So we're going to start adjusting that. And we set all the adjustments, and we roll this out over a period of time. It puts a constraint on operating expenses, means less money to spend, and it brings about forced frugality. We got to spend appropriately, but more importantly, it brings about ways to innovate, to bring about greater margin. How do you dictate a bigger premium for what you're doing? So you basically align the health of your business by taking the appropriate percentages up front. Then we know what we have to work with. We adjust our business accordingly to be healthy.
So if I haven't plugged it, everyone should go buy the book. The instant assessment's in there, which I think is a great tool for you to be able to look at your business and where it kind of stacks up versus the fiscally elite. I want to ask you a question that may be a little more specific to financial advisors. And I'll talk about ours. A lot of them have built a good recurring now, but that's not always been the case because some of them lean a little more heavy insurance. So it can be a little more upfront or one-time revenue coming in. It's not always as predictable as a recurring. Now, one of the first steps we tell them to do is you have to transition, a good portion of your business to a recurring revenue model so you have this consistency. But take some of those who don't. Maybe it's not as systematic or recurring. It can be a little, roller coaster depending upon when things come through, when things fund. How does Profit First help them in a situation like that? Or are there modifications that they should use if the revenue coming in is not as consistent?
Yeah, for sure. So in the book I teach what's called the Foundational Five. There's 5 key accounts that every business should have. And it's an income account. It's a depository only account. Money flows in there. And then subsequently gets dispersed to other accounts. It's a way to see what's flowing into your business. It's actually a cash flow management technique that I explain. The other accounts are profit. We already talked about that. The compensation of the owner, we talked about that. The taxes and the operating expenses. Those elements every business should have. But there's some businesses have a seasonality, and that may happen here, or at least variable income. So you may have a few big months and a few slow months. In a case like that, we set up what we call a drip income. Now, I'll give you an extreme example because I think it'll illustrate it really well. Imagine a company that plows driveways. Well, I live in the Northeast. You're in Kansas.
Good time of the year right now.
Yeah. When the snow comes pouring down, they're making a lot of money. The summer times, it's pretty scant. So what's interesting, I talked to these snowplow guys, and you talk to them in like March or February, and they're like, oh my God, I'm crushing it. Amazing year. I'm rich. Talk to them in August or September, and they're like, I'm devastated. I have no money. And it's this constant, predictable pattern. And that's part of Parkinson's law. Rich in cash, we feel rich, we spend aggressively, where all the cash goes away, and then we panic. So we set up a drip. The realization is this: the income that comes in today has a responsibility to cover us for a period of time. So I make money in December. It's really have to cover me for the entirety of the year. It just happens to be appearing in December, but it has 12 months of responsibility. So if all that money came in, we'll say in December, I put it in an account, but I call it drip income. Every month, I take 1/12 out of it, recognize it as income now, and disperse it out. And starts to normalize those waves, and the business starts acting much more appropriately.
You've obviously you have a whole network now built out, profit first coaches that can help people implement this. I think a lot of times we hear the saying that experience is the best teacher. You experienced some lows as an entrepreneur that kind of forced you into really studying this. Have you seen it? Asked a different way, is it almost required for the business owner to experience those lows to change their approach to cash management? Or is there a way that you've seen the ability to change someone's mindset around they're doing okay, they maybe don't have the lows, but they don't have that pain that forces them into this?
Yeah, it is very difficult. It's possible, and I'll give you a technique, but it's very difficult for people to transfer or change their behavior when they don't have a heart attack moment. If we look at people that smoke cigarettes, no one needs to be educated on how dangerous cigarettes are. Like, that's done, and yet people still smoke. But when someone has a heart attack, the rate of people stopping smoking at that point skyrockets because they say, oh, this actually is affecting me. So with Profit First, it's not as draconian as smoking, but there's a financial heart attack, and then people are like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this. The unfortunate thing is how we delay that heart attack is through an artificial means of trying to sell our way out of it. If we simply sell more now, that means my cash flow today is in excess of my spend. But the spend is a growing constant. Cash flow is unpredictable. So the day that month slows down, the day we have a bad few quarters in a row, holy crap, the business is going to be devastated. So that's the heart attack moment. The way to get there, though, without going through a heart attack, is look back at your history is one way and say, has there been moments of uncertainty? Do I get a little agita and don't sleep well at night? Look at that as a cumulative effect. And then maybe that's enough to say, okay, I've had enough of these mini moments to change me over. But there's another technique, and this is my favorite. It's just a small test. Basically, it's a prove it to yourself method. And what we do is we tell people, there's a whole Profit First system. There's all these steps you can take, and it can have major impact on your business. But let's try it out with 2 steps. This is it. Step 1, call your existing bank and add a new savings or checking account. You can do it online nowadays. It takes a few minutes. Step 2 is allocate 1% of any of your income to that profit account. So we're going to set up an account. We're going to call it profit. Allocate 1%. So if $1,000 comes in today, $10. The power of this 1% is interesting. It has no effect of any significance on your business because $1,000 of deposits or $990, roughly the same.
Yep.
But there's a significant impact on the perception. It's like, oh, I have $10 of actual cash sitting here with one sole intent to distribute to the shareholder, to give to you, the owner, at a future point. And let that roll. Let it go for a month or two. And then you see that $10 has grown to $500, $1,000. It's usually around that point where we have people implementing Profit First saying, why not try 2% or 3% and growing into the full system? Of those 700,000 businesses, now it's over that are doing Profit First, I would say 80 or 90% started off with that 1% method. Maybe it took them a year or a year and a half, and now they're in a full deployment of Profit First.
Which is ironically, my friend Scott, he said, make sure he talks about, how to start small, because that's exactly what he did. And then he's like, just kept ratcheting it up and realized like, this isn't a big deal at all, but kind of like you said with your 401k, man, if you set it and forget it and then slowly increase it over time, you don't really notice that. So that's, I think, a great tool for everyone. The thing that I love about the book, everything that I've read that you do is there's theory behind it for sure, but there's actual like real life implementation, right? It's not just all theory. It's like, no, here's how to actually go do it. One of the things you talk about are the 8 mistakes that you've seen, quite often. Maybe at a high level, just hit those common like 8 mistakes that you see.
With Profit First?
Yes. Yeah.
You made the bullet point because I've written 9 books now, and I can't remember lists of things.
Well, let me go find them here.
I know a couple off my head. I just won't remember all.
Well, and that's fine. Maybe just hit a couple of them, because I don't know that we'll have time for all 8 anyway. So yeah.
Here's the mistakes in the implementation. The first thing people do is they say, I'm going to skip doing this at my bank. I'm going to do this in my accounting system or on a spreadsheet. And it sounds so obvious. We're just moving numbers around. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, how do you manage your business? If you log into your bank account more than once a month, once a week, some people check in multiple times a day. I'm actually guilty of that. That is your natural tendency. Profit First is a behavioral intercept. We're setting up these accounts at your bank specifically so you see money pre-allocated to its intended use before you spend a penny. If you do this on a spreadsheet, but you don't look at the spreadsheet, it's useless. And I'll tell you, everyone listening in right now, if you have an accounting system, QuickBooks or whatever it is, if you have that, all your money is accounted for, every penny, including your profitability. And therefore, you should be highly profitable because it's in there. But chances are you're not looking at it. Maybe someone is, but most of us statistically don't look at it. And therefore, we're not managing our money. So we have to set the behavioral intercept. It has to be at the bank. I'll give you just a little anecdote. About 10 years ago now, I made a commitment to myself to work out constantly. I believe in that. That's the most foundational, important thing I can do for myself in my business is to have strong, good health. And that constant workout, 5-6 times a week, is what I need to do. Well, I thought I was working out 5 or 6 times a week, but when I tracked it, it was more like 5 or 6 times a month. So I set up a behavioral intercept. I realized every morning when I wake up, I go to the bathroom, drink a cup of coffee. It was in that process of waking up, going to the bathroom, I said, oh, I'm going to put my gym sneakers on top of the toilet seat. The only way I can do what I do every morning, go to the bathroom, is by first grabbing my sneakers, and now it's forced, it's required. This concept's the same. If you go to a bank account, as you walking into the bathroom, we must have the intercept, the account's there. So that's how you overcome I can do this on spreadsheets. The next thing is another point of resistance is the fees my bank's going to charge me is going to be off the hook. I have all these accounts now, and if I don't have the minimum balance, they're going to hit me with these fees and so forth. A couple tips I have here. One is to realize almost every bank is a private institution. So if you're working with some mega bank, they're a private institution. That means they have the ability to waive fees. They can do whatever they want for their customers. You're a client of theirs. You're not obligated to them. They're simply a vendor to you. You have the right to say, I don't want to pay fees. And they have the right to say, we don't want your business. You have to pay fees. And you have the right to walk out the door. Or, and this usually happens, they'll say, oh, okay, we'll waive the fees because we want your business. I've had readers literally walk in with the book, because I talk about this in the book, put it down and says, this dude, the author dude, says, I don't have to pay your fees. I don't want to pay. And the person on their side says, all right, we'll waive them for you. So you can ask.
Yep.
Second thing is there's a lot of banks, regional banks, local banks. There's one bank I've fallen in love with. It's called Relay. So you can go to Relay. They're an online bank. No fees. What I love about Relay is they specifically accommodate the Profit First method. They have a Profit First option you can click on, and they accommodate.
Really cool.
So yeah, it's super cool. They do the allocations for you and all that stuff. So these banks exist. Another common resistance is my accountant, my bookkeeper. They won't support this. They don't want to do all the reconciliations. Well, here, and this is a little bit kind of hard-nosed, go to your accountant bookkeeper and ask them, tell me what percentage of your clients are currently profitable sustainably. And what I mean by this is they give out quarterly profits. The owner's paying themselves appropriately. They don't worry about their taxes because the business pays it. I suspect the accountant bookkeeper will say, none of my clients do that, or maybe 5%.
Yep.
Well, then if 5% of your clients, their clients are achieving the outcome that you want, maybe that system isn't working. So tell the accountant, this is the system I want to try because I want to be one of those 5%. If your accountant still resisted, I question if your accountant has your best interest in mind as opposed to their historical education in mind. And I'm not trying to bash accountants. They're following the accounting system. This is a cash management tool designed specifically for entrepreneurs that log into their bank accounts. So they may not be familiar with it, the accountant, but try to encourage them to get there. And if that doesn't work, there's going profit first professionals, people certified in this process, that'll help you out.
All right. Those are some good ones. Yeah, and because I do want to talk clockwork also, and make sure we have time for that. So switch gears on that a little bit. You talked about the idea of growing versus scaling earlier, and when you talk specifically about scaling, I think sometimes people think streamlining processes, it's technology that may replace staff allow you to scale. One of the things you start with is defining who your top clients are. Why do you start there with the idea of scaling?
So what's so interesting is a very small portion of our clients represent the majority of our business. This is based upon the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule.
Yep.
It's not true for every business, but for most businesses, the minority of clients are the majority of the profitability. And yet most businesses treat all clients equally. And the reality is we should give preferential treatment to our best clients. They are the heart of our organization. On the flip side, there's a small portion of clients that are draining. They're never satisfied. They're threatening. They won't pay your bills, and they go on Yelp reviews or whatever and slam you. Those clients are poisonous to your business. Now, I'm not saying they're necessarily bad people. I'm just saying they're a bad fit.
Yep.
We got to eject that poison. Let our competition swallow the poison. We need to cater to and protect our best clients. And once we start catering to them, we'll learn what service set they most need. When you're trying to serve everyone equally, it broadens our service set. When you cater to the best type of client, that ideal avatar, if you will, it actually reduces your service set, which then automatically brings about efficiency.
So follow-up question to that on this book specifically. A lot of advisors come to us, and they're really good advisors, right? Really good at sales, really good at getting in front of people, but they're doing the majority of the revenue driving for the organization. They're the advisor, right? Which is very common in a lot of businesses. You call that the doing portion of the business.
Yeah.
When they come here, a lot of the reasons they come is they're worn out from the doing, and they want to get to this designing portion, right? Where it's like they're delegating work, they have a team built around them, they have systems and processes in place. I've seen how we're able to do it, and some of that's modeling the behavior with other advisors and the steps they've taken. But what have you seen specifically people do to transition from the doing to the designing phase, and maybe any hurdles that they have to overcome in that? Because I think for any business owner, that's the hardest transition to make, to go from the doer to the designer of it.
For sure. And I do want to acknowledge that any business owner will always be doing a portion of doing. Yep. Jeff Bezos he's not packaging our Amazon shipments, but he's surely negotiating new locations and cities. He's doing the high level stuff. So the doing work we do moves to higher level stuff. For me, I've moved on to spokesperson. Like what we're experiencing now, I talk about the stuff, but I don't deliver the service on the brands anymore. I write the books and speak about it. And that's the doing work. Designing is the strategic. It's where can we move? Who can we partner with? It's all that planning. And honestly, it's harder work in many cases because it's long-term and you don't see results immediately. I compare it to digging a ditch versus solving a Rubik's Cube. If you give people the option, most people say, I'm going to go out and dig the ditch. It's exhausting, but I can see immediate results. The Rubik's Cube, every time you turn it, sometimes it gets more frustrating. It's like the puzzle's getting worse. So we just ditch it and we go dig ditches. So first of all, it's acknowledge you'll always do some doing, but to move to designing is we have to start blocking time. Now, I'm going to start off with the extreme because I found that this is the equivalent of the necessary kind of cardiac shock, those shock panels that we need to get a business shifted, business owner. Take a 4-week vacation. And here's what I mean. I've studied in Clockwork's case, usually thousands the number, about 1,000 businesses, and found that in all industries, or almost every industry except for government, that most businesses move in 4-week cycles. We attract new clients, maybe we lose a client, employees, we close out the books at the end of the month. Everything happens every month, and just months repeat over and over again for most businesses.
Yep.
So therefore, my theory was if we extract the business owner from their availability for 1 month, every part of the business will be touched upon in their absence. And if everything can sustain, therefore the business can run into perpetuity without the business owner, and the business owner can become a designer. So here's the big, hairy, crazy ask. 18 months from today, that's a year and a half, book a 4-week vacation. The reason I picked 18 months out is there's enough time to prepare and plan, but 18 months is also imminent. It's coming around the corner. Book a 4-week vacation. That is a full physical and digital disconnect. If just the concept of that gives you a little bit of a heart attack, that shows how linchpin you are to your company and how problematic it is. The other thing about the 4-week vacation is this. Every owner will take a 4-week vacation. The question is it preordained and planned, or is it something thrust upon you because of a health scare or a family crisis or something that happens? Everyone's going to leave the business at some point. But I think most of us have this perverted vision that for the next 40 years, I'm going to be here. Probably not. So not only are we taking a 4-week vacation to remove ourselves from the business so the business can run on its own, it's also a fire drill. By removing ourselves, I do it every year. I'm away for at least a month. Last year, I took 8 weeks. I remove myself from business so the fire drill's in place. And if I ever can't be available, I know we have all the contingencies in place. I believe this so much. I have 22 employees. Every employee takes a 4-week vacation, mandatory, and it's paid, which sounds like an amazing benefit, and I think it is. But the benefit is me. Every employee has to have a redundant position for them. My bookkeeper in-house here can't just do the bookkeeping by herself. She has to have people backing her up because for a full month, she'll be away. The president of our company, the same. The video guy, the same. So extract yourself. The other component is once you book this 4-week vacation, and maybe you're terrified, we need to start running tests pretty quickly. We need to extract you out of the business by giving you short mini breaks from the business. If you have employees, and probably have one or two, one of the common fears I have is, oh my God, I'm taking advantage of my employees. I'm on the beach drinking Mai Tais. They're running the sweatshop. The reality is it's the ultimate form of empowerment. You are saying to your employees, here's the keys to the kingdom. I trust you. You've got this. And the thing is, most people want to be empowered. Most people will never start a business. Only 18% of the population ever starts a business. Only 20% successful. That means 3% of the world population runs a small business successfully. The other 97% wants to work for a successful business where they have confidence and comfort. And by giving them the keys to the kingdom, you're entrusting them with the business. You're giving them what they need and what they want. And you're giving the business what it needs and wants by you getting out of there.
It's such a... being able to watch it, we've been doing this for 18 years now, and to be able to watch advisors who come in and literally I remember this vividly. We had Beth was in our office, one of our advisors. She's from Pennsylvania area and was talking to our entire team. When we have them in, we have our whole team get a chance to hear from them. She said, before I joined you all, which she's been with us probably 7-8 years now, she's like, I hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years.
Oh my God, yeah.
Not a vacation, like a day off. But she's like, this past year, this was beginning this year, she's like, I took 13 weeks off last year, and I made about 5 times what I made, before. And I'm just irony. Like, man, more freedom, more fun. And that's what I see. And that's why I want advisors to hear and read the books, but implement the things here. It's like, it's not just that you're going to make more money. Like, you have more freedom, right? When you do this the right way, it creates so much more freedom in your business and your life. It's more fun, more financial gain also most of the time too.
Yeah, so. Most of the time. And the valuation of your business takes off.
Yeah.
I've had 2 exits, and both cases, the business was dependent on me, and so the business valuation decreased. Think about the buyer who comes in, and they say, hey, I want to buy your business, and you, the owner who's leaving, I understand the entire business depended on you, and now you're intending to leave.
Yep.
The value drops. They want turnkey businesses. My current business doesn't need me. I own multiple businesses. There's one, I participate about 1%, just be the spokesperson. The business doesn't need me. It is so valuable because a buyer can come in, it's turnkey. You buy it, here's the automatic revenue.
Yep.
Mike might be going on vacation, doesn't matter. The business will keep humming along. So it increases your value too.
One other quick question I want to ask around clockwork. You talk in there about as the business owner's looking to scale, and maybe you can just give some practical tips around this. They have to understand if the problem is themselves, the people, or the process. How do they go about identifying, where does the problem lie?
Yeah, it's a great question. So those are the variables, right? The people, the process, also the profit point or the pricing is a common one.
Yep.
So what I invite people to do is to do some evaluations. The first thing I do is I look at pricing specifically. I'll say, okay, if we double our prices, what is going to be the reaction of our customer base? Are they going to be shocked, or are they going to say, what took you so long? And if they're going to be shocked, that means we're devaluing what we present. We're commoditizing ourselves. The best customers aren't valuing us on price. They're valuing us on the return they get. So if someone sees you increase prices and they say, what took you so long? That means we have the price right. And that's really the circumstance. So often I'll meet with the company and say, we first need to adjust price, and it starts this cascade effect. Certain customers say, you know what, price does matter to me. I'm a commodity shopper. We'll go to the cheapo guy down the street. I'm the higher end advisor, and the right clients stay with me. It also starts refining some of my products. That's one of the other P's that we need to consider. So we've priced products. Often we've too much variability in products. There's this concept, which I've been researching, which is the captive customer. You have a captive audience. You can keep selling more things and realize it's actually harmful. Very commonly said that if I have a customer that buys one thing, it's easier to sell that customer another thing than a new customer. And it is true, it's easier to sell them, but it starts diluting your ability. Imagine a heart surgeon who says, oh, I have captive audiences. People come in for heart surgery. I should do brain surgery too. I can double my business. Why not be a pediatrician and also, a geriatric specialist? Well, the problem is, do you want to go to a brain surgeon who says, I only do brain surgeon 1/4 of the time. Other times I'm working with geriatrics and pediatrics. No, I want someone who's so attuned to this that that's all they do. Realize that your best customers, they may not see you as life-saving like a heart surgeon, but they see you as life-altering. And if you dilute yourself, the acute smart customer will say, no, you're all over the place. I don't feel that you have the expertise at the highest level. So I look at price, I look at product variability, I try to reduce it. I look at the clientele themselves. And what I do is that analysis, I sort my clients out typically by the revenue they generate for me. I have a saying that people speak the truth through their wallets and not their words. So people may say they love you, but what I really know when they love me is when they keep spending with me recurringly, they invest more with me. That's someone who really appreciates me. I categorize my best clients and I treat them the best, but I also ask them questions so I can clone them. And I'm going to give you one question that's like a Jedi mind trick. I go to my best customers and I'll say, what am I doing right? And they'll come back to me and say, you're so attuned to what we need. You're proactively communicating, whatever it is. Now, here's the thing. When you ask your best customer what you're doing right, they don't tell you what you're doing right. They tell you how they judge you. And once you know how they judge you, that's the one thing you need to improve upon. So here's the great irony. Whatever you're doing right is actually the one thing you need to do better for your customers. And they'll become raving fans. My IT business, that was the first company I had. My best customers said, you respond quickly. That's how they judged me. They were monitoring how quickly I was responding. So I started to respond quicker. We changed our dispatch method. I blew them away. They're like, this is amazing. I don't know what you're doing, Mike, but your service is remarkable now. Well, I'm doing what they told me to do. And as a result, I started to attract more and more customers in that industry. That avatar started being attracted to me, and the business grew explosively. So those are the parameters I look at.
That was really good. So if I'm going to recap that, what I heard you say is they're going to tell you what it is. So these are your ideal clients telling you this is what they love about you. This is what you do well. You improve upon that, becomes even more attractive. That's good.
That's exactly right. because they see 1% of what we do. And when you ask them what I'm doing right, they tell you the 1%. We think it's the other 99% that we have to improve. Be in the ballpark, but they don't care about that. Fix that one. Make it so remarkable, you'll define the industry or redefine the industry.
That's cool. That's really good. Okay. I know I've had you, and I know we have a hard stop. I want to ask you just some quick lightning round questions. These can be quick answers, kind of first thing comes to mind that we end with. So the first one is this. Looking back over the past few years, starting, with COVID, it changed the way a lot of us are looking at things as leaders. Is there one lesson that you've taken away from the past few years that you'll carry forward for the rest of your life or career?
Yes. It's become so clear to me. The number one job of an entrepreneur or business owner is to be a creator of jobs. Let me repeat that again concisely. The number one job of an entrepreneur is to create jobs, not to do the job. Anytime I see myself doing the work, the first question that has to come to me is, how do I get someone else to do this? Because I am stealing someone else's job. Just back to that earlier point, 3% of the population runs businesses successfully. If I'm doing the work, I'm stealing the job from the 97% who want the job. So be a creator of jobs, not a doer of jobs. That's your responsibility.
That's such an interesting mindset shift too. And I know I said these were going to be quick, but I still think back to when we started Advisors Excel 18 years ago. We always said, the three of us who started, like, we never want to have more than 40 employees. We have like 840 today, right? And so there was there was this point where it was like, actually, this makes our life easier. The impact you're able to have, the people you're able to help, the things you're able to do is fantastic. You're able to grow so much more. But so many people equate more job creation with more headaches or challenges, and that's a whole different topic we can get through. But that's a really cool approach. It's like, your job as an entrepreneur is to be a job creator.
Correct. And thank you to you. You've given 840 families an opportunity. So thank you to you. You're serving us. You're serving the globe, the economy.
That's cool. I haven't heard that answer before, so that's a really good one. Okay, what is the one thing that you did that graduated you from being a good leader to a great leader?
I hired a great president and allowed me to lean into my talent. I'm a great cheerleader for our organization. Mm-hmm. In fact, I wish I could take you for a little tour of our office here. Outside everyone's door, we call the personal operating manual, kind of like a cheat sheet that you would get when you get a new computer. We highlight what our strengths are and stuff. We use different tools to figure that out. I'm a great cheerleader. I'm not a great organizer and project manager. The president of our company is extraordinary at that. So by removing myself from a weakness and allowing myself to come in and do the rah-rah and then let Kelsey, our president, run the rest of the organization, was probably a move from a moderate to bad leader to a pretty effective one, I think.
That's really good. Yeah. Okay, third question. Is there something you're doing this year to drive your own personal growth that you're excited about?
You know what I'm doing? Yeah, I'm trying to break out of some patterns. I love reading business books. I love doing things, but I'm so patternized. So one thing I did, I said, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I'm going to start reading fiction books, but I'm going through the 100 classics. I'm reading The Great Gatsby right now, which my wife is aghast. She's like, didn't you read that in high school? I'm like, I don't think I did. I should have. So I'm reading The Great Gatsby. But what I'm finding as I read these fiction books is, I just finished Atlas Shrugged. When I read these books, it's like, oh, there's some lessons about life itself in here that I need to discover.
Yeah, I'm a big reader. I actually enjoy reading. I read a fair amount of fiction too. I have to actually dedicate myself more to reading than nonfiction. But the thing I say is, I think it helps me creatively, right? When I read fiction, right? I just think it's a different mindset. So that's cool. Yeah. Okay. Can't be one of your books, although I've already recommended those hopefully enough, and people are going to go pick them up. But what is the one book that you've recommended most to other entrepreneurs?
The one I've recommended most?
Or maybe that you would recommend most today, maybe.
Most today, okay, that's different. So the one I've recommended most is probably E-Myth, and I love that book. Yep. It's great theory. Don't work in, work on your business. I think the one I'm recommending most right now is probably The Creative Rule by Rick Rubin. He is a prolific music producer, and he makes the art of creativity into a science. And so it just has all the structure of how to be creative. It's fascinating. And interestingly, he talks about, and I talked about constraints with Profit First, he talks about the importance of constraining. The artists that restrict what they have available are the most creative. I just was reading it this morning. I do read every day, but it's almost always nonfiction. And he was talking about how this one artist said, I'm only going to work with blue. And I can't remember the artist's name at the moment, but only did a thing in blue, and it's become one of the most popular, most kind of cutting edge art pieces of the time because he restricted himself to one color. I
haven't read that, but he's fascinating. So I've read a lot about him and heard him
wickedly
a lot,
smart dude.
Yeah, very much. Okay, final question. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice is be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. It's a quote from attributed to Oscar Wilde. Actually, I don't even know if he's the creator of it, but it's attributed to him often. And to me, that's the essence of success. Success is not trying to keep up with the Joneses, which I thought it was for the longest time. It's just being a full expression of who I am. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Mike, thank you for sharing so much wisdom today. I know I've mentioned the two books, Clockwork, Profit First.
Thank you.
But what are the best ways for people, outside of buying those? How else can they learn about what you're doing or follow up on any of the things that we talked about?
Yeah, I invite people to go to my website. I'll give you a shortcut because my last name is Michalowicz, and no one can spell it.
I was just happy I got it right in the beginning.
Yeah, you nailed it. I can't believe it's the rarity. It's Mike Motorbike, like a motorcycle. The irony is I've never driven a motorcycle, but that was my nickname in grade school. The only G-rated nickname I had. So the other ones I didn't buy the domain. But if you go to mikemotorbike.com, I now have 9 books out there. You can get all the chapter downloads. I used to write for the Wall Street Journal for quite a few years. You can get my articles. I have a podcast too, mikemotorbike.com.
Awesome, Mike. I appreciate it. For everyone that listens, and I would just say this, like, we have a lot of great guests on. I've seen in person the things that Mike's talked about today change people's lives. So I would highly encourage you to go get it. I appreciate you taking the time to join us, Mike. For those of you who listen, go share this with other people, especially entrepreneurs that you know, because it is a game changer. And we need more great leaders today. So go be great. Mike, again, thank you for the time.
Thank you, brother.